All right. My voice is sounding strange. Welcome back to Tomboy Official. Welcome back to the podcast. I just recorded 20 whole minutes that I think, let me start over. I went 20 minutes off of topic, and that's fine. Let me focus. So I wanted to talk about trans representation, non-binary representation, basically non-Cis representation. Got some stories. So I'm trying to start with the important part, but my mind just wants to go absolutely everywhere right now. So let me just write a couple notes so that I know what to come back to. Okay. So now that I wrote that down, I can move on. So I want to talk about Leo Shang from The L Word. He pronounces his name Leo Shang. He says that most Mandarin speakers would actually say Sheng, but he says Shang, and so he says that's how he introduces himself, and so I will say Shang. And so Leo Shang is from the L Word, Generation Q, also had a role in Matrix, I think, was it Matrix Reloaded? Which Matrix was it? It was one of the Matrix movies. Leo Shang is a queer, trans, male, Chinese American. He's an actor, currently living in LA. He went to school for social work and was raised by two adoptive mothers, who I believe were social workers. And he is from China, adopted into the U.S. by non-Chinese mothers. And so, Leo Shang talked on Ashley Gavin's podcast about some very important topics. And for people who don't know Ashley Gavin, check her out. I'm going to put a link to the episode that I'm talking about where Ashley Gavin had an interview on her podcast, We're Having Gay Sex, with Leo Shang in that episode. And back then, Gara Lonning was doing, the co-hosting. So we'll talk a little bit about Gara Lonning as well. Gara identifies with pronouns they, them, trans masculine, non-binary, white. I think Gara lives in New York. Ashley Gavin lives in New York as well. And so talking about some of the topics that Leo Shang brought up, so he was talking a lot about traveling documentation for a trans person and just documentation required for trans people, and how people who don't really need to think about documentation, papers, further identification and things like that really is a form of privilege. So there was some aspect of talking about privilege. And so So Leo Shang in that episode also talks about traveling with a significant other, and talks about his dating preferences. And yeah, I'm gonna post that Ashley Gavin episode. Around 23 minutes is when he starts talking about these types of topics. But then there's other topics in there too. Garrett Lonning has topics about dating and, or not dating, but about like working in like stage performance. And Ashley Gavin has some stories about, you know, a scuba instructor who was hitting on her girlfriend. I guess it was a cis male, likely straight, scuba instructor who was hitting on her girlfriend and actually asked if the girlfriend was wanting to have sex with him. Like, this was like after they had left, and through Facebook. I don't really know what to say. But yeah, I went off on a 10-minute rant about that earlier and then got a little bit sidetracked with some other topics. So I'm trying to stay on topic to talk about these important topics for like trans and non-binary people. So this isn't too extensive. There's definitely more that I haven't thought of, more that I haven't experienced, more that I don't know about, haven't been educated about or come across. But I mostly wanted to talk about Leo Shang and his discussion. He did talk earlier in that episode somewhat about dating. So I'm gonna actually move that section. Sorry, I'm like editing notes as I'm talking. So okay, because I want it to be in a certain order, and I'm kind of like, it bothers me when I'm looking at my notes and they're not in the order that I want them to be in. I have enough trouble focusing as it is. So yeah, getting into the main topic, just mainly talking about, in a way, travel. So travel, as well, travel requires documentation. Usually if you're leaving your house in any form, even just going across the street, you're likely going to carry an ID on you. I never really liked leaving, like, even to like exercise or something, or go to the beach or something. Or just like drive or whatever. I've never liked not having ID on me because, what if you get, like, not to be morbid, but like, what if you get in an accident? I mean, like, maybe if you can't talk or something happens, you want to be identifiable, I would think. And that's maybe the easiest way, is to have at least an ID on you. Like, I remember when I never was really into running, but I remember I would used to kind of go out to like hike/run at the beach and stuff. And I don't know if you remember, I don't know, they probably still have these. I think they still have them, I just don't use it. It's like that armband where you can kind of strap in your phone to your arm, so you don't have to rely on pockets. And then, I think I had one where you could fit like a key. Your what was it? You could fit a key, your like an ID, maybe like a credit card. Like, you could fit some little stuff in there. or they have those little like fanny packs or the little running pouches and stuff where you can like keep your stuff. Like usually you're gonna need to find a way uh to keep your stuff. And I have the same issue at the beach. you know I don't like leaving my stuff out on the sand and just jumping in the water if I'm the only one there. So usually what I do is I just bring my backup ID and the car key, and I leave all my other keys and stuff in the car. And then if I know I'm just gonna go swimming kind of by myself, you know. But yeah, like you usually wouldn't even, I don't know if people travel without an ID like on purpose, but I've never really traveled on purpose other than like when I forget my wallet, or when I'm just like whatever, I'm just gonna go across the street real quick and like grab something, and like maybe I won't bring my ID. But it's like usually like when I'm thinking it through, like just for safety reasons, I think I bring my ID, and I think most people bring their ID. So even when you're not going to use your ID, you usually have it on you just in case you have to use it. But yeah, Leo Sheng was talking about some really important factors. And by the way, I really love his character Micah on the L Word Gen Q. I think Leo's probably my favorite character other than Shane. But just for different reasons. And then, so let's see. Sorry, I have to move one more thing. All right. So, Leo Sheng talked about how this the process of getting ID, documentation, government forms, changing like official paperwork, all those things, it's an extensive and expensive process. And there is privilege involved, that he mentioned with being perceived as cis. So a person who's perceived as cis, basically whatever your birth certificate says you are, like if it says you're male, born a male, and if you look male, that's basically, you would have cis passing privilege. So even for trans people, they can have cis privilege, cis passing privilege, or cis perceived privilege. I think I like the word perceived more than passing, because passing it kind of implies a lot of things. Like, you don't necessarily have to be passing to be like more trans, or more like like a better quality or anything. Like a lot of things are internal to your own full self, and the external things that can be changed or not changed, I mean, that's completely up to the individual person. I mean, I'm not really talking too much about myself at the moment in this episode, but I would say just from my own experience, I've had easier times, at least going on dates with people who are perceived as cisgender. Even when I have kind of dated like people that weren't trans, but kind of, were more androgynous presenting in some shape or form, it's just a lot. It's a lot to deal with. It can be a lot to deal with, not necessarily with that specific date of a person, but more so society and just all the complexities of things that happen in society, just as, somebody sees you for a certain way. Like, yeah. So, there is that sense of privilege that Leo was mentioning, and I mean, it's privilege to a certain extent. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say that trans people have privilege necessarily, but it's like, I mean, if you're comparing like different types of perception, how people perceive someone just kind of in passing or when they don't really know them too well, you're likely going to have a lot less hassle when things are just straightforward about you and others don't have to think about it. If a cop knows what race you are, it's going to help you to some extent. If you're a black person but you don't look as dark, you're likely going to have certain kind of privilege to some extent with police overall. But maybe if you live in a black community or hang out at like a black church or something like that, you might face a lot of prejudice for being a light-skinned black person. So it's kind of like, it kind of just depends on the scenarios, the situations that a person's faced with. It's kind of like, it's hard to really say, okay, you have privilege fully, because it's like, yeah, in certain situations, in passing, people might not like bat an eye or like do a double take or anything, but then it's like, you might not fully, like, I wouldn't really say that trans people have privilege necessarily, but it's like, if you're gonna say like who has more privilege in a situation where someone is perceived as cis versus not perceived as cis, if you're perceived as anything that's kind of not too straightforward, there might be less privilege there. But I mean, yeah, I wouldn't really say that trans people have privilege necessarily. Just like I wouldn't say that black people have privilege. Like, it's kind of like, it kind of depends where you are, what you're doing, what the situation, what the scenario is overall. There's an overall system in place that's just not really there for it. And so when it comes to what Leo was saying with government forms and privilege and being perceived as cis, there are things that come along, such as, legal name changes, birth certificate changes, and that state to state, these rules and laws and methods of, getting through government forms and all that kind of stuff, that changes state to state. I haven't even gotten into talking about rights yet. I mean, I do want to get to that, but I've got a lot of research I'm doing. But trans rights, many states do not have rights and protection for employment and education and harassment and different types of things like that. Abuse and violence and that kind of thing. A lot of states don't have protection, like, against forms of bashing and, that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, people just aren't protected. And so, let's see. I'm going through my notes here. So citizenship So Leo mentioned citizenship papers, and then also needing a letter from a doctor that the sex is listed differently on the passport than on other documents. And so this was how Leo was describing his process of getting a passport, saying that he didn't get it up until a few years ago because of this whole process. Because, you can't just walk in and get a passport. You have to have your legal name changed before you can get your passport that says what you want your legal name to say. You have to have your official birth certificate to be able to do that. You have to have citizenship papers, likely a green card, and you have to be a citizen in the U.S. To be able to get these types of government forms. You have to have a doctor that will sign off saying that the sex listed on your passport is different than on your birth certificate. So Leo mentioned that during this process of trying to get a passport, his birth certificate still said F for female as the gender from birth. He mentioned that, when he got his driver's license, the people at the DMV, or where I'm assuming it was the DMV, the people at the DMV automatically put M for male, because, Leo was, perceived as a cis male, and got, an ID that says M for male. So if you consider things like, just looking at the situations, right? Looking at this from a distance of how a person lives life. Like I already mentioned, right? Most of us likely wouldn't leave the house without an ID of some form, just in case you need it. And that's just in case. You don't usually need it. For example, the last time I went, well, not the last time, I've had my ID checked in multiple places, but very recently I went with a close friend of mine. We were shopping and they were buying some art supplies. And some of the art supplies, they don't let just kids buy them because they might huff them or spray paint things or vandalize or whatever. And so they require an ID check. Like, just like when you go to, like, for example, Michael's, the arts and crafts store, you can't just buy, spray paint. Or when you're a kid, you can't just buy a lighter. Like, you have to have a certain age limit. And I've even seen some places where you can't even buy C4, the pre-workout, without an ID. They keep it locked up, and you have to get an ID to be able to purchase it. 18 and older. And so, basically when my friend was shopping, they had to check the ID, and, the cashier made a comment, about how different they looked, because my friend is a trans person, and, yeah, it was just, it didn't go, like, far to some, like, strange kind of, like, situation, but it's, like, usually people don't comment on your ID, like, if you're either perceived as cis or if your ID looks just like you, usually people aren't going to be like, oh, like, I thought you were this gender, or I thought you were that gender, or, like, whatever. Like, usually they're looking at it for the age, and they're usually not going to comment on anything. And so that's just casually shopping for groceries, or casually shopping for, hobby and work supplies. Say you go somewhere in a store and you're gonna buy beer, or gonna buy wine because you're gonna have a dinner party at your house or have some friends over or whatever. It's like things like that, that are just like, you know, even if you are cisgender and perceived as cisgender, if you had a point in your life where you didn't maybe look just like your ID does now, like if you've maybe cut your hair to a certain style, or you're taking something to grow facial hair because that's what you want, or you've grown your hair longer, or you're wearing makeup now, or whatever it may be, even if you're not a trans person, you can still do whatever it is that you want to do, and your ID might not look just like, somebody would expect. So, just the process of like having to go through a double take. I mean, if people haven't been through those kind of double take experiences where somebody's like really looking at your ID more than they do the other ones, or kind of like they say, hold on, and they have to take your ID to the back, or you have to step aside in the line, and they have to like assess something about you versus everybody else that you came to the event with in the group or whatever. Like, there's always something that might come up that's like that, where there's like something that happens where you're just like, oh my gosh, like, and it definitely creates a lot of anxiety for people, because I'm just thinking, like, how often you really use your ID. Like, you don't maybe have to use it all the time, but that's what I'm saying, like, that, you're likely not gonna like never use it. Like, to try to avoid using your ID, I mean, you can't go to the dispensary, you can't buy alcohol. There's a lot of things that you can't buy, or places you can't enter. I've even been at places where if one person's buying a drink, everybody at the table has to show their ID, and then it's like, okay, and I'm not even talking just about, driver's license or like your California ID. Like, I'm in California, like your driver's license or California ID or whatever. I'm talking about all of it, like all of your whole thing. So, and I think that was something I really didn't know, that the doctor has to write a letter. I mean, what if your doctor doesn't want to write a letter? Because doctors don't all write letters for stuff. I mean, I've worked in mental health for a very long time now. I'm hitting my 7-year mark this year. It's going to be like 9 years if you count, 9 years just being like part of this company. And when you look at it, like the process for getting doctors to sign paperwork, usually they'll sign, like, I don't know, I've never gotten to kind of have doctors sign direct paperwork related to like trans or non-binary situations necessarily, as far as like, because the only paper I think that we had the doctor signing where I would have been in charge of like some form of like filling out something would be like general relief or SSI for disability, like a reduced rate bus fare pass, disability pass, like work disability, those EDD forms, our psychiatrists, at the time when I was working at the sites where the psychiatrists were working, we don't have psychiatrists at this site. They weren't responsible for that paperwork, or if they were, I was never on a case where I never had any direct clients that needed me to help with any of that process. I did have trans clients. I did have quite a few LGBT clients. I'm pretty sure everybody at work knew that I was gay, and I think a lot of my clients knew too. I just think they were pretty respectful about not really getting in my business about it. The reason why I'm pretty sure about it is because of the way they would ask me questions, because they knew that I knew things. And so that is one way that I kind of, because like the way they would, I'm trying to like, I don't know if I can actually give an example, but the way I didn't have a whole lot of trans clients, but the way they would talk to me would be like, you know what's up. Like they knew that I knew things. We mostly talked about their relationships. It was mostly relationships with their parents, relationships with their, dates, and different things like that. But, yeah, I don't really want to go too much into it. Yeah, there really wasn't enough support. Like when I think back, I'm like, dude, if I was like the only one who kind of was like pretty aware, and I even know now more now than I did then, and so I don't really think there was enough support at all. And in our assessments, we definitely wrote, a lot of information about sexuality, gender identity. We reassess that every year. So, people were open to that discussion. And I did kind of notice people kind of like questioning and maybe, having some kind of reevaluation of things kind of later on. So I'll put it this way. I noticed people, not everybody, but like I noticed some clients having some questioning and reevaluating of their own identities as I worked with them after some years. Like some clients I worked with for like 5 years or so. So I do specifically remember some of them came in and they're like, oh yeah, I'm hetero, and like, and the options were even different back then, but like I'm hetero and I'm like we weren't even really using the term cisgender like at the very beginning. I don't think, I don't know. I think the first time I heard the term cisgender was from a friend of mine who was on Facebook saying that they didn't like the terminology because it made it seem like hetero. Well, I guess you can't really say only hetero, but it makes it seem like well, I think that's how they worded it though, that hetero people were trying to, claim a space in the LGBT identity by using cis, and that was taking away rights or identity or important issues from, trans people or non-binary people somehow. And at the time, I think I agreed. I was like, because I think the way they explained it was that, hetero people are trying to get like change how, the acronym like LGBTQIA, like all the like the LGBTQ plus, we're trying to change it to add like a C or something. I don't know if I mean, this is years ago, guys. It was being posted on Facebook, and so I don't even remember the last time I posted a thing on Facebook. So this is how long ago it was, is that we were posting on Facebook, and I don't even use Facebook. So it was so long ago that I've forgotten the whole conversation, but I think that's what it was talking about. But anyways, yeah. So Leo, going back to Leo, we start thinking about, and we're not even only talking about IDs, but when you're talking about government documents, government forms, government identification, not just like your ID and driver's license. I was thinking about things, some of these things he was kind of mentioning, some of these things I was kind of thinking. It's like, think about when you move, you need documents when you move. You can't just like apply for something with no paperwork on yourself. Like, you might not need your birth certificate, you might not need a passport, but you're gonna need some form of identification about yourself. If you think about going to the bank and opening an account of some kind, you're gonna have to have some kind of identification. If you think about the application processes for a new job, I think it was Ashley Gavin that mentioned, a lot of jobs, even if you don't drive, you still you might need, proof that you can drive, proof that you have a driver's license, proof that you can travel. You might need, for housing applications, you might need certain things for moving across the state, across the country, to another country. You're going to need certain paperwork. And then he mentioned, the aspect of privilege, of actually having access to physical documents, like if you have a green card, or the financial privilege aspect of, all these things. If you need to get copies or other like additional documents, this type of stuff costs money. It requires funds. Requirements to have doctor involvement. Not everybody wants to be a part of the medical system, but if you're a trans person, you're likely going to be forced to deal with doctors, and depending where you live, that might not necessarily be ideal. And doctors can do some form of gatekeeping too, where I don't know if gatekeeping is the right word. I always assume gatekeeping is like they're keeping people out from contact with another person, like a screening system, kind of how an admin kind of is the gatekeeper of a clinic. If the doctor doesn't want to talk to somebody, they have to go through admin first. And so a gatekeeper. So the doctors can be gatekeepers towards, if a person gets access to certain signatures on certain things, referrals, treatment, kind of recommendations, disability aspect. I mean, imagine someone keeping you from getting your ID. Imagine someone keeping you from getting appropriate paperwork signed to a point where you can't even get a passport. I mean, I'm not saying that I know anyone who's been through that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure I do know someone, but I don't think they've mentioned it. But I know people who have been denied housing, people who have been denied all kinds of things. Like, it's not even the same person over and over. These are like different people, you know. People are, you know, within their own comfort. You know, I have certain friends I can't hang out with in certain places because of the you know, potential for prejudice experiences and for them to experience, unfortunately, and all that kind of thing. So yeah, like that's just some of the stuff that Leo Shang mentioned, you know, and just overall, you know, people getting kind of like involved in personal business. Just if you think about how that goes, I mean, yeah, so let's see. And so talking about Garelaning, so I think I mentioned, but Garelaning, I originally ran across Garelaning online as Ashley Gavin's co-host on the We're Having Gay Sex podcast. Garelaning goes by they, them, identifies as trans, masculine, non-binary, and white. And Gara is on Instagram. I think their Instagram is like Gara rah 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 or something. I don't know how many raws, but there's a lot of raws. So if you just look up something like that, Gara pops up. A lot of kind of like quirky videos of dancing around and just kind of real awkward stuff. It's like funny, creative, cringy. That's the best I can describe it. But, you know, I always thought, you know, Gara had like a cute personality, funny laugh, really interesting, smart, intellectual things to say, but joking around a lot. And talks a lot about gay sex, like for sure. Does a lot of banging, and interesting person to have on the show. And so we'll get back to talking about Garelaning, but for now that's kind of what I wanted to mention about Gara. And I think Ashley has had co-hosts so far, other than one co-host that she has right now, that I can't remember her name, but I think the other two co-hosts, Kate Sisk, was still figuring out gender pronouns, and then Maddie Weiner, the current one, still figuring out, you know, gender pronouns. And so you know, Ashley Gavin seems to have, you know, people on her pod that, you know, she has a lot of representation. A lot of the people might not maybe have the, you know, they might not be perceived as cisgender, or they might be perceived as cisgender. They might not be perceived as trans or non-binary, or like, you know, that they, you know, are questioning their or undecided, or having undecided pronouns. That might not be obvious, but that's how they identify themselves when, you know, every episode when Ashley Gavin goes around and says, you know, after the little bit of, you know, just kind of like joking around and stuff, they go around and they say like their pronouns and, their preferred pronouns, how they identify, their race or ethnicity, that kind of thing. And I think that's pretty cool. Like, I don't really know many podcasts that just kind of introduce that way. And so, yeah, Leo Shang went on to kind of talk more about dating. So Leo mentioned dating a significant other, traveling with a significant other. So it was at about the 23-minute mark that Leo started talking about different topics, and started mentioning this trip to South Carolina with a girlfriend, and the girlfriend was a Caucasian partner, and they went in South Carolina to this antique store where there were a lot of like Confederate flags and Nazi symbols and Nazi kind of figurines. And the partner didn't really seem to notice that Leo was really uncomfortable there. And that was kind of just a complicated situation. Like, I don't know, as far as dating is concerned, like there's not really anything you can really do if you're just kind of like window shopping, pop up into town, you want to just check out different types of stores and shops, and you happen to go into like an antique store. Antiques are like used stuff. Like, it's not quite a thrift store, but it's like it's somebody else's stuff. So I mean, I've never really known for sure if antique stores were kind of like catering more towards like the locals who sell stuff to them, or do they seek out the collections, or are they offered the collections? Like, I know how pawn shops work, I know how thrift stores work, I don't know how antique stores work. Because I would think, okay, if you go into a pawn shop and there's a whole bunch of Nazi kind of stuff, you would think, like, wow, there's a lot of local Nazis, pawning stuff around here. Or if you went into a thrift store and saw a bunch of, like, Nazi stuff, you'd be like, wow, there's a lot of local people who are bringing in, like, Nazi things. So I'm not sure if that's representative of a population in the area that's, that has antiques, that's selling them to that antique store, and that the antique store is like, oh sure, yes, I'll try to resell this, or sell it at a profit. I don't really know the process for that, so that would be something to maybe look into. But I was thinking, if it's local, then that is a little concerning, that there is a market for Nazi stuff, and that somebody has a shop where there's a lot, like, enough Nazi symbols and stuff for somebody to notice it. Like, I would say, like, if you walk in somewhere and there's like one or two, it's like, okay, like maybe somebody was like getting rid of this stuff. But if you see like multiple walls full and like shelves full of stuff, it's like, whoa, like what is up with this? That would be a little weird. But I don't know. Maybe they got like a big shipment. Like, I don't really know how that works. But yeah, for the partner to be kind of like unaware, and I believe this partner was a cis Caucasian woman, because Leo mentioned only dating cis women mostly, in his history up to the point that he was recording this episode. Um, and so, um, yeah, as far as the dating, and going out on a date and someone not really noticing discomfort, I think sometimes that's something that's maybe easy to do. I mean, I've kind of noticed that with, I don't know, I'm kind of not really knowing if I really want to say, if I want to mention it, but, like, I wouldn't say that I date a lot of, like, straight women. It's not really that they're straight, like, they don't identify as straight, but their lifestyle is very straight. And other than the fact that maybe I met them at a gay bar or on a gay app, I probably wouldn't know otherwise. They might not have gay friends. They might not be out to their family at all or any of their friends, and they might just be living a straight existence. And I think that's something that I've experienced. I don't think I've really experienced a lot of like people not understanding like ethnic and racial things. I mean, a little bit, but not to a point where it's like, you know, like it was like things that happened in passing that's like, you know, I'm not gonna be too I don't know, like I'm not really going there, but yeah, I've definitely dated people that were in a very straight world and kind of just didn't really understand, you know, some discomfort with certain like really hetero environments. Not so much that they're hetero environments, but more so that it wasn't like clear ally environments and maybe stereotypically prejudiced environments. I've gone on dates with people kind of like that are kind of like, oh, why don't you want to go to this place? And it's kind of like, I don't think that's a good idea, you know? Like, you know, certain like straight clubs where you have to, you know, if you're a female, you got to wear like a dress or a skirt kind of thing. And so it's like, you know, certain things, like just trying to like describe it to somebody who's not really too much of a part. I mean, I've never been like invited to like a lingerie party or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, you know, if I had a friend who was gonna like invite me to one of those, I'd be like, what? You know what? You know, like, like I don't know. There's just certain like really like high femme culture type of stuff that I'm just like, I like, why would I want to do that? I don't want to do that. Like, that doesn't sound appealing to me in any way. Like when people want to go get like makeovers and that kind of thing and like get makeup and all that kind of stuff, I'm just like not into it. Like I don't know. I'm into like tribal face paint. That is kind of more like, if I was gonna wear makeup and if it wouldn't draw like attention in that way, I would probably just wear that. Like, that kind of appeals to me more than like makeup, or just like, you know, I saw Arrows do this before, where they had this like color, kind of like neon colored facial, I guess it was technically a makeup, and it was like bright blue or bright green, and they would put like maybe like a mark next to one eye, and then just like some other couple marks other places on the face. And like it was a style of like makeup that was like, it's not traditional, you're not doing eyeliner or lipstick or whatever. I found that I was like, I could rock with that. Like, I'm not really into lipstick and long lashes and all those other things. Like, the only place that has it in my life is ASMR videos. That's the only thing I like. That's the only way that I learned hardly anything at all about makeup, is through watching ASMR videos, when people had the little like mascara brushes and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, what's that thing? Like, what's that sound? And you would look through like the timestamps, and it shows you like what they're using, and I was like, that's how I know what it's called. I didn't I've never bought any of these things. I've never purchased any of these things. I mean, I'd be more likely to buy a power drill than like makeup, in all honesty, and I'd probably use it way more than I would use the makeup. But yeah, that's one thing that I would probably have more of an appeal towards. I just don't like, I'm not like an attention seeking person too much, and so I think for me that would draw more attention than what I would want. But if I was going to play around with that kind of thing, that would be my option. I think the only time that I felt comfortable going to a well, it wasn't fully comfortable, but partially comfortable, was going to a makeup counter with a trans date that wanted to go and try on like lipstick and stuff themselves, not me doing it. But I mean, they kind of totally understood the situation. And I remember another time where, I mean, I've talked about these before, where my dad took me and one of my cousins to buy perfume, one of my female cousins to buy perfume, and I was just like, I don't want any, like, but it's like, on the other hand, it's like, of course my dad's gonna be offended, because it's like, I'm willing to spend like a few $100s on you buying like one of those like nice perfumes and stuff, and I'm like, I don't want it though. Like, I don't want any of this. Like, I don't want it. So it's kind of like, I mean, I like perfume, but it's a little, I don't like when it wears off. That's the part I don't like. But there were some, I like the Paris Hilton one, from like, this is like from like way back, the pink one. I don't know what, but it was like, it smelled like cotton candy kind of. There were some other ones that I really liked. There was one of my favorite fragrances was in a magazine, and I can't remember what the magazine was, but it was my favorite fragrance. But I like lotions. I like lotion, and like, I kind of like body spray. I like soap and lotion, and it's basically about as far as I'm really gonna go. Maybe some body spray. I like hair products that smell nice. Other than that, I'm not really like too concerned with like perfume and stuff. I appreciate it for what it is, but those types of things, I would say, if I went on a date, those would be the things that for me would be a little out of my comfort zone, of like, you know, let's try on dresses, let's try on makeup, let's, yeah, you know, come to my friend's lingerie party kind of thing. Like, that, those kind of things are just not anything that I really would find fun or interesting at all. I just don't want to do it. And yeah, like, and even like going to certain, I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but going on a date with the female in a place that is like not very, how should I say, friendly, not very queer friendly. Like, there aren't a lot of places like that, really, but it's like, I just don't, it's really hard to explain. Like, there's not, like, a place that I can think of, like, okay, I wouldn't go there. But it's like, there's just certain stuff that it's like, if you're perceived as a couple, and you're two women, and you're there, it's just a little, what is going on with these sirens? They sound like they're, like, drunk. Oh man, like, okay, so say for example, like, a couples massage, right? Or like any kind of like couples trip, like a day cruise kind of couple thing, or like whatever, where it's not catering to gay people, but it's like, we're two women coming in here for this thing. You know, you can get a little bit of pushback for certain stuff. So that would probably be my only real set of, like, experiences where, you know, there's been, like, discomfort or somebody not really noticing the discomfort. Usually has been with, like, cis women who kind of have a very kind of straight presenting lifestyle that just don't, like, involve themselves with a whole lot of gay cultural stuff. And I mean, that's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Like, you don't have to be like running around wearing like rainbows and glitter just to be like gay. Like, you don't have to wear a sign or have anything obviously like visibly gay about you to be more gay than anybody else or whatever. Like, none of that really. It's not like a competition. Like, but it does make a difference, though. It does make a difference when people are kind of like aware of those types of situations where there's like people actually, like, you know, I don't want to say interfering, but there's people who are kind of like part of your ability to make decisions about certain stuff. And then Leo mentioned some interest in having relationships with non-cis women, because he has a history of, you know, dating only cis women. And so non-cis women, you know, I wasn't sure if he meant trans or non-binary or, you know, non-gender or what, but non-cis, basically. So someone who doesn't identify as a cis female. I mean, I don't know. I like dating non-cis people. Like, I don't know if I would say that I prefer it. Like, the only reason I would maybe say, I mean, okay, I'll say just, if I don't know a person, I'm likely going to be more attracted to them if they're more like on the androgyny end of things, to some extent. I mean, there's a broad range of androgyny, but even just a little hint of it, I'd be more attracted than not. More attracted than, just like in passing, like if I don't know anything about a person whatsoever, I'm definitely more attracted to, that. But I would say if I had to rely on, dating only, androgynous people, or, only people who, had some kind of non-Cis type of presentation about themselves, or, you know, or thought about themselves or identity about themselves. Like, if I had to only date those people, I probably wouldn't date as much. Like, I'm not really doing a whole lot of dating lately, but I probably wouldn't date as much because I don't really find those people as often, I would say, that just like directly have the identity that they talk about, and they have labels and different things like that. But I would say it's not uncommon to find somebody who has some aspects to their gender that they play with, or that they're questioning, or something along those lines. I definitely say that I come across quite a few people, like once I get to know them, I'm like, oh yeah, like they're totally like this or like that, I need to blow out this candle because it's I think it's messing with my sinuses. I've had it on too long. Oh my gosh. All right, got a lot of smoke now. Yeah, I think it was kind of messing with my sinuses a little bit. But yeah, and then like, I don't know, like dating people who aren't maybe fully identified as cis, or maybe don't present fully, like, strictly within like a lot of gender rules, I tend to find them a little more relatable, or at least, even if we're not like doing the same exact stuff, they're usually like, they can kind of like they're like, oh, I get it, like they're not like, oh, like what, like that's, oh, like what, like they're not like confused, It doesn't take a lot to explain. There's not a lot of like explaining. I mean, there's definitely like conversations, because like nothing's gonna be like fully obvious where it's like, oh yeah, I totally knew that about you, but they kind of get it, that like, oh, like there's more to things sometimes, and you can kind of like ask questions, and you kind of just get to know each other on that level of those types of things that go on. And so let me see. Yeah, so I guess one last thing. How long have I been? Yeah, I feel like I've been talking for over an hour. I definitely have been, but that's how I feel too. I'm like, man, my throat's a little dry here. And I feel like I've been like thinking for a while too, because my brain is kind of just like not all there. And get some water in me. So, man, I'm blanking on this comedian's name. I think I've talked about this person before too. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I have to look this up. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. Let me see. Give me a few seconds to try to find this. I'm not going to look too hard, but I have to actually look, because I like to kind of mention people and what they say, not just me like making it up. So I'm scrolling through Ashley Gavin's podcast to get to, or try to see which episode it was that this one comedian was on. Okay, I found it finally. Oh my gosh, Irene 2, last name spelled T-U. So Irene 2 talks about, I think I mentioned this before too, airport security checks. So Irene kind of has this bit that's related to airport security, and let me see if I can find that, and I will post a link if I can find it. Let me see. Yeah, TSA. The ones about TSA. So, and gender mix up. So, Irene was saying that, at TSA, at the airport, they choose which gender a person seems like before they walk through the scanning. And so usually what happens is, for Irene, because Irene is more mask presenting, usually Irene goes through the scan and gets asked to, step out and then go back through it a second time, and they go through it, and usually, the security has to set it for a female body setting, because there's a difference between them scanning a male body versus a female body. And so they just pick, and then sometimes they choose wrong, and then they pat you down, or like it's either you go back through the scan or they pat you down, and then they find, body parts. If they're doing like pat down and they assume that you're male, and then they pat your chest and it's like, oh shoot, like this is not a man. It's not like a male contoured chest. It's not, there's something going on there. And I don't know, like it was kind of funny because I was just realizing, I was just like, I always get pulled over by the security after I go through the scan, and they always do a pat down, and they're always checking my waist, and I don't know what that is about. It's not, I don't know if it's considered waist, because I wear my pants pretty low. Like, I ride my pants pretty low. Like, they're pretty dang low most of the time. And I probably mentioned on here too, like, the majority of the underwear I usually have are usually, even if they're not men's underwear, they're usually like a certain cut, like boy short cut or a certain type of cut. They're not like the classic, like Victoria's Secret, like panty kind of situation. I'm not saying I've never owned those or that I don't have any. I just am not very likely to wear them. And I just know that those kind of underwear, like the female underwear, the thin, they usually have not all of them, but most of them have a really thin, a thin waistband compared to like guys' underwear. The waistband is usually thicker. Even like guys like jockey briefs or like they have a thicker waistband. It's usually like thicker elastic. Boxer briefs usually have a waistband. It's almost like an inch thick. Usually, like, not all the time, but a lot of times it might say like the name around it or something. And I'm not sure if that's what they're seeing, because usually I take off my belt and put my belt through the scanner because it has the metal piece on it, and so I'm usually not wearing a belt, and they always are like patting around my waist, and I'm just kind of thinking like, what are they looking for? And it's all the time. I'm like, I don't understand what they're looking for. The only thing I can think is that like it's because my underwear are thicker than maybe they would expect. Like, I don't know if they're checking that deeply, but it's like I can't think of any other reason. Like, I'm not like the thinnest person on earth, but I've been pretty thin at other points in my life when I was a lot younger, when I was super athletic, and I was quite a thin person, and they still were checking then too. So I don't really know what it is that they're seeing through that scanner, but they're seeing something. I mean, my pockets are empty, my belt is off. That's the only thing I can think, is that maybe I'm wearing the underwear that they didn't expect me to wear. I really don't know what else they could be looking at. I'm not like wearing a bunch of stuff. Like, I usually just wear shorts. I wear underwear and shorts over my underwear, like almost exclusively wear shorts. If I wear pants, they're usually thin, or if it's like for a reason where I have to wear pants, then I'll wear like chinos or something. But like usually I'm almost exclusively wearing shorts, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Like, I feel like my pants aren't that abnormal from anybody else's. So I'm thinking it's got to be the underwear. Like, I don't know what else it could be. Like, they always pick the female to pat me down. So they know that. They know, okay, woman, pat down woman. Like, they've never had, like, a guy, like, come up and then start, like, doing their procedure and then being like, oh, wait, like I've never been, like, misgendered as a guy at the airport, to my knowledge anyways. I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I really don't understand. Like, I'm not, like, mad about it. I just like to know what the heck it is, because it is a little weird that it happens all the time. And that's the only thing I can think, is that it's the waistband. They're looking through a scanner where it's like usually people don't have like a thicker waistband if they're female, and then I do have one, and then they're just like, well, let's just make sure you're not like hiding anything in like, in the belt line of your, like, the waist of your shorts. Like, that's the only thing I can think. And then they're always like concerned about my pockets. Are my pockets empty? Yes, my pockets are empty. I emptied out all my cargo pockets because I have 1 billion cargo pockets. I know, but it's like, I mean, they never find anything, but I don't know. They always kind of like run their finger on the inside of my shorts. Like, they're not like touching anything. Like, there's nothing going on. It's just kind of like weird. I'm like, and I don't know why I never really thought about it till now, but when I was thinking about, topics that relate to travel and maybe gender related things, and then remembered what Irene 2 said, and then I was like, oh shoot, like, I have this weird thing that happens at the airport all the time. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I dress how I dress. I mean, it's going to draw some kind of attention. I wouldn't expect it to draw security attention, but it's like, there's things come up. And this day and age, I'm curvier than I was before, in my past life. So, and I still somehow get occasionally misgendered. Like, I don't really think I look like a guy. Like, I think I can. I mean, like, yeah, and definitely with the face mask, it's not like very clear. But I'm not really trying to really look like a guy. Like, that's not really the intention. I'm not really into like high femme looking type of fashion. I wouldn't say I'm really into like fashion necessarily. I like sneakers. I like fun socks. I like my hats. And more like certain style of clothing. I like certain designs and colors and stuff, but I'm not really too... I mean, that's about all I would describe if you want to talk fashion. That's about all I would really have to say about it. But yeah, I'm trying to compile topics based on category. It is really hard to categorize things. But let me see. I'm gonna try to post this stuff in the show notes. I hope it's not too messy. It's gonna be just my kind of shorthand, kind of just like phrases. It's not gonna be like a full blog post type at all. But check out those episodes from Ashley Gavin's We're Having Gay Sex podcast, and from Irene 2's TSA bit that they do in their stand-up. And I'm tired, so I'm gonna stop recording for now because I've almost been recording for 90 minutes and this is exhausting sometimes. Like, I have fun with it, but it's like I'm literally getting tired, which is a good thing. I don't really get tired that often, honestly, but which is bad. That's not good. But yeah, like, I'm actually getting a little tired, a little worn, in a good way though. But I'll be back on here with more topics. I hope to have more trans and non-binary and non-cisgender topics. It's just a matter of categorizing some content. I don't know if I have a lot of personal stories I want to talk about like directly right now. I think I told the ones that are relevant for this episode. So with that, thanks for listening.